The Nile River, often called the cradle of civilization, has been the lifeblood of northeastern Africa for thousands of years. Its waters have nourished empires, sustained millions, and inspired legends. Flowing over 6,600 kilometers, the Nile is the longest river in the world, winding its way through 11 countries and supporting a population of more than 300 million people who depend on its life-giving flow for drinking water, agriculture, and industry. From the ancient pyramids of Egypt to the bustling cities of Khartoum and Addis Ababa, the Nile has shaped cultures, economies, and destinies. But today, this ancient river is at the heart of a modern geopolitical crisis. The Nile, once a symbol of unity and abundance, has become a source of tension and division. Headlines around the world warn of a looming conflict, as nations that share its waters struggle to balance their own needs with those of their neighbors. At the center of this crisis is a dramatic shift in power. For centuries, Egypt has enjoyed near total control over the Nile, relying on historical treaties to secure its water supply. But now, Ethiopia's ambitious construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydroelectric project, threatens to upend this delicate balance. Ethiopia, where the Blue Nile originates and which contributes nearly 85% of the river's total flow, sees the dam as a path to development, electrification, and prosperity for its people. This clash of interests is not just a local dispute, it threatens the stability of the entire region. The Nile is a vital artery for trade, and the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Any disruption to the river's flow or the canal's security could send shockwaves through global markets, affecting everything from oil prices to food supplies. For Egypt, the stakes could not be higher. Over 90% of its population lives along the narrow strip of land bordering the Nile, and the river provides almost all of the country's fresh water. Egyptian leaders point to colonial-era treaties that guarantee their rights to the Nile's waters, arguing that any reduction in flow would be catastrophic for their people, their farms, and their cities. Ethiopia, on the other hand, rejects these old agreements as unfair relics of a colonial past. With a rapidly growing population and a pressing need for electricity, Ethiopia insists that it has every right to harness the river's power for its own development. The Grand Renaissance Dam is a symbol of national pride and a beacon of hope for millions who still live without reliable access to energy. The Suez Canal's security is now inextricably linked to the fate of the Nile. If tensions escalate, the risk to this critical trade route grows, threatening not just regional economies, but the flow of goods and resources around the globe. The consequences of a so-called water war would be dire. Millions could be displaced by drought or conflict, sparking waves of migration across already fragile borders. Scarcity and instability could fuel extremism, deepen poverty, and ignite unrest in cities from Cairo to Addis Ababa. Despite years of negotiations, diplomatic efforts have so far failed to produce a lasting solution. Talks have broken down, and trust between the parties is at an all-time low. The world watches as leaders exchange accusations and warnings, while the threat of open conflict looms ever closer. The completion of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam marks a turning point in the region's history. Its massive turbines promise electricity and progress for Ethiopia, but also raise fears of water shortages downstream. The dam has become a symbol of both hope and anxiety, altering the dynamics of power and cooperation along the Nile. To truly understand this crisis, we must look beyond the headlines. The story of the Nile is one of ancient civilizations, colonial legacies, economic ambitions, and the complex web of international relations that binds nations together. It is a story of survival, adaptation, and the search for a fair and sustainable future. The world cannot afford to stand by as tensions escalate. Global leaders, international organizations, and the people of the Nile Basin must come together to find common ground, promote dialogue, and prevent disaster. The choices made today will shape the fate of millions for generations to come. The stakes have never been higher, and the time for passive observation is over. Every moment counts as the clock ticks toward a possible crisis. The world must act now to ensure that the Nile remains a source of life, not conflict. The future of the Nile and the millions who depend on it hangs in the balance. The decisions made in the coming months and years will determine whether this ancient river continues to sustain life or becomes a flashpoint for conflict and loss. The world is watching, and the outcome is far from certain. Egypt's bond with the Nile is ancient and profound. Historical treaties granted Egypt control over the river's flow. Egypt's military strength enforced this status quo for decades. The Aswan High Dam solidified Egypt's control but increased dependency. Egypt's strategic hydro-hegemony is now under threat. The Nile remains a red line for Egypt's national security. The stakes of any change in the river's flow are immense. In 2011, Ethiopia announced the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The GERD is Africa's largest hydroelectric project, crucial for Ethiopia's development. Ethiopia sees the dam as a symbol of national pride and progress. The dispute centers on the dam's reservoir filling speed and operation rules. Ethiopia's control over the Blue Nile shifts regional power dynamics. Egypt's historical veto power is now obsolete. Egypt faces a severe water scarcity crisis. The Nile provides over 97% of Egypt's fresh water. A reduction in flow threatens agriculture and food security. Rising salinity in the Nile Delta endangers fertile lands. Egypt invests in desalination and efficient irrigation, but needs guaranteed water flow. The stakes are existential, driving Egypt's firm stance. The GERD's impact could exacerbate Egypt's water crisis. Ethiopia views the Nile as a key to its development. For centuries, the Nile has been the lifeblood of the region, shaping civilizations and sustaining millions. In Ethiopia, the river is not just a source of water, but a symbol of hope and opportunity for the future. The country's leaders and people see the Nile as an essential resource to unlock economic potential and improve the quality of life for generations to come. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, stands at the heart of this vision. It is not only the largest hydroelectric project in Africa, but also a beacon of national pride. The GERD is vital for generating electricity, powering homes, industries, and schools across Ethiopia. Reliable energy is the foundation for economic growth, job creation, and poverty reduction. For millions who have lived without electricity, the dam represents a new era of opportunity. Ethiopia's ambitions extend beyond its borders. By exporting surplus electricity to neighboring countries, Ethiopia aims to foster regional integration and cooperation. This not only brings in much-needed revenue, but also strengthens ties with its neighbors, paving the way for shared prosperity and stability in the Horn of Africa. However, historical agreements over the Nile's waters largely ignored Ethiopia's needs and rights. These colonial-era treaties favored downstream countries, leaving Ethiopia with little say in how the river was managed. This legacy of exclusion has fueled Ethiopia's determination to assert its interests and secure a fair share of the Nile's resources. The GERD is not just about Ethiopia. By regulating the flow of the Nile, the dam can help prevent floods and droughts downstream, offering benefits to Sudan and Egypt as well. With careful management, the GERD can become a model for shared water resources, balancing the needs of all countries along the river. Achieving these shared benefits requires trust, dialogue, and cooperation among all Nile Basin nations. Only through open communication and mutual respect can the region move beyond conflict and build a future where everyone prospers. Ethiopia's ambitions are deeply rooted in a desire to correct historical injustices and chart its own path to development. The GERD is a symbol of this new chapter, one where Ethiopia takes its rightful place as a leader in the region. Ultimately, the GERD is not a weapon, but a tool for progress. It embodies Ethiopia's hopes for a brighter, more equitable future, not just for itself, but for all who depend on the Nile. The GERD dispute has sparked a geopolitical chess match. Sudan's position has shifted, aligning more with Egypt. Uncoordinated GERD operations threaten Sudan's water infrastructure. Regional powers like the UAE and Saudi Arabia attempt mediation. Turkey and Qatar support Ethiopia, adding complexity. Global powers tread carefully, balancing alliances. The dispute's resolution could set a precedent for global water management. The stakes extend beyond the Nile Basin. Diplomacy has failed to resolve the Nile dispute. Egypt and Sudan demand a legally binding treaty. Ethiopia seeks flexible guidelines for dam management. The 1997 UN Convention offers principles but no clear solution. The African Union's efforts have been ineffective. Trust erodes with each failed negotiation. The diplomatic stalemate risks escalating the conflict. A resolution requires bridging fundamental legal disagreements. The ongoing tensions surrounding the Nile River are not just a regional issue. They pose a significant threat to global economic stability. The Nile is a lifeline for millions, and any disruption in its flow can have far-reaching consequences. As countries compete for access to its waters, the stakes are raised for international markets and economies that depend on the region's stability. The Suez Canal, a critical artery for global trade, is directly linked to the Nile's security. If tensions escalate, the canal's operations could be jeopardized, potentially disrupting the movement of goods between continents. This would not only slow down supply chains, but could also lead to increased shipping costs and shortages of essential products worldwide. The risk of military conflict in the region is real. Should disputes over water rights turn violent, the entire Horn of Africa could face destabilization. Such instability would likely result in humanitarian crises, mass displacement, and a surge in security concerns that could spill over into neighboring countries. The ongoing Nile dispute is more than a local quarrel. It sets a powerful precedent for how nations worldwide might handle future water shortages. As climate change intensifies, the world is watching closely, knowing that the outcome here could shape global water management policies for decades to come. Egypt, heavily reliant on the Nile for agriculture, faces a looming crisis. Reduced water flow threatens crop yields, which could trigger food shortages and drive up prices not just locally, but across global markets. This agricultural strain could ripple through international food supply chains, affecting millions. The uncertainty and instability in the region make it a less attractive destination for foreign investment. Investors are wary of putting money into projects that could be derailed by conflict or resource scarcity, leading to stalled development and lost economic opportunities. In today's interconnected world, the effects of the Nile crisis are felt far beyond Africa. Disruptions in trade, agriculture, and investment send shockwaves through the global economy, highlighting just how interdependent our systems have become. Ultimately, a water crisis on the Nile is not just a local or regional problem. It has the power to impact markets and societies worldwide. As the situation unfolds, the world must pay close attention, recognizing that the fate of the Nile could shape the future of global stability and prosperity. The Nile conflict is a complex geopolitical standoff. Egypt's survival depends on the Nile's uninterrupted flow. Ethiopia's GERD symbolizes a new era of self-determination. Diplomacy has failed to bridge the gap between nations. The situation is precarious, with global implications. Cooperation is the only path to a sustainable outcome. The challenge is transforming conflict into opportunity. The world must act before it's too late.